The methods lectures this year are about what economists can learn from machine learning. And so this partly follows my own personal trajectory, where I spent 8 years working with a search engine. And when I started working there, I didn't even understand what people were talking about. I spent some time thinking they were crazy and all wrong. But then I started trying to do some of my own analysis and realized that in this big data environment, the techniques that I knew and loved were inadequate. Machine learning methods are great for dealing with heterogeneity. So if you want to study advertiser behavior or seller behavior or price elasticities on Amazon, and you want to understand what's going on, if you try to pool everybody together, you get garbage out, you get noise, you get nothing. And machine learning methods are just much, much better at helping you deal with that kind of heterogeneity. I can produce 10,000 elasticities and do something with them. We are very bad at model selection within econometrics. We tend to try to pretend that God told us what the model should be, and we never once changed it. Whether machine learning is much more honest about model selection, and they have procedures that systematically let the data choose for you what the model should look like. And so some parts of econometric models have causal interpretations, and the specification is really quite important, and theory and methods should really tightly guide how we specify them. But all the attributes of individuals, I don't have a theory of like why 67-year-olds are different than 68-year-olds, and people who viewed the following 3 websites are different than other people. And so for that part, the attributes of individuals, machine learning methods can systematically tell us how to specify the kind of descriptive part of our model and use cross-validation to make sure that the data is choosing for us what's the best fit. And it can help you make better trade-offs between the richness of the model and the out-of-sample predictive power. And I think that's something that we should adopt systematically in economics. Computer science and economics have been coming together over the last 15 years in the space of e-commerce and the internet. And so a lot of the interesting e-commerce applications like online advertising or eBay or Amazon and so on really had a lot of computer scientists doing the engineering to build the platforms. And so they were the first ones there to the problems and the first ones there to the data. But after you get the systems working and the website's up and you're running auctions for advertising and so on so that the engineering works, you then have to think about the economics. Well, how do you set the prices? How do you run the auctions for advertising? How do you manage marketplaces to make sure you have enough advertisers and sellers as well as enough users buying things? And those are really economic problems. So they've reached out to economists to help them with that. Machine learning is not a marriage of economics and computer science. Machine learning, most people in machine learning don't know that economics would have anything at all to say about what they're doing. And they're actually sort of hostile to the idea that social science might have any improvements on their ways of doing things. So part of my education effort in that community has been to explain that social scientists spent many years trying to understand how to use observational data to do causal inference, and that causal inference actually is quite important for machine learning applications. A lot of the very cutting edge stuff is happening in search engines and on Amazon and recommendation algorithms and political marketing. But those techniques developed there are getting applied much more broadly.